Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Daniel Derryberry, and if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below. That lets me know that the content that I'm pushing out is the type of stuff that y'all like to watch. And also, while you're down there, check out the description for my affiliate codes, Morphogen Nutrition and Sage Bio Labs. Morphogen Nutrition is everything bodybuilding supplement related, and Sage Bio Labs is everything blood work related. They have their own pre-built lab panels, male and female, and they have even integrated their own AI that will help with interpreting your own lab results so that you can make better informed decisions on your own with managing your health. And with that, all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hello, everybody. This is going to be, I guess, a series that I'm starting now. So you want to be a bodybuilder. I feel like it's a very fair name for the series, as I'm going to be trying to start with the foundation of what makes a bodybuilder. Whether you're an amateur, an IFBB pro, or if you're a Mr. Olympia caliber competitor, this stuff applies at every single level. So I've actually wrote down a checklist today of some of the foundational things that I think you should prioritize the most when first getting into bodybuilding as a sport, whether it's a sport or if it's just purely for the sake of vanity, you just want to do it for your own physique goals. These are some realistic step-by-step goals that I would follow when first going into this sport. And you can apply it outside of just being a bodybuilder. You know, a lot of this can be applied to powerlifting. It can be applied to just overall developing athleticism in the gym. So it kind of applies in terms of just health and wellness in general to start. And as we start to continue this series and it starts to progress more and more, and as I get more specific questions, I'll try to go over more specific topics. But step one, set realistic goals. What I mean by that, and it's a really broad, step one. Where do you want to be in the next year? Where do you want to be in the next 5 years? Where do you want to be in the next 10 years? If you ask me what my goal was when I first started working out, it was I just want to feel like I'm making results. Plain and simple. Because whenever you first start, the reason a lot of people that are not, your typical gym goer, when you have a conversation with them, I always hear that same thing thrown at you. Oh, I don't know how you're committed to the gym. I just don't see any results. And it's because they never spend enough time in the gym to even see progress. But then whenever they try to, stick to the gym, the results are probably not substantial enough because they're not making any other changes to their lifestyle outside of just, well, I'm going to Planet Fitness now and I'm walking on the treadmill for 30 minutes and I haven't changed my diet, I haven't improved my sleep quality, I haven't improved my water intake. It's just all these different things that you make one change to your life, but whenever you come to find out, or what you'll come to find out with bodybuilding specific, and I'll kind of get into this later, so I'm going to try not to, go on tangents, but what you'll find is that health and wellness, bodybuilding is, the nitty gritty. I'm going to be a meathead and I'm going to get muscular. But when you learn that it has a lot to do with athleticism and becoming a healthier athlete, you'll realize that's how bodybuilding in a sense can be healthy. I'm not calling so we're not even getting into PEDs today. Bodybuilding can be healthy whenever you compare it to how the average person is living nowadays, and I'll get into that shortly. So, realistic goals. Do you want to put on muscle this year? Do you want to lose fat this year? And why I say this year, the average person that's first getting into the gym, you're not going to put on 10 pounds of lean muscle tissue and also lose 30 pounds of fat. Like, you're going to have to choose one or the other. But this list that I'm going to, read off of that I've created is going to help you apply yourself in much better ways that you might be able to hold on to more muscle, if not slightly build muscle, especially if you're a new gym goer. It's very likely you're going to put on muscle while losing body fat if your goal is to lose weight. If you don't crash diet and starve yourself and you actually train how you should probably be training in order to maintain muscle mass, if not put on some. And then if the opposite is you're a really skinny guy, skinny girl, and your goal is I just want a bigger butt, or I want bigger arms, or I want bigger, then this is the point. Realistic goals, realistic expectations. Don't think that in the first month you're going to have some wonderful transformation. Believe me, I think I think honestly, if you ask me, and it really comes down to like where you're at in your physique goals. If you're overweight and you want to lose a bunch of weight, It's very common that the people that you meet nowadays that are in the gym and have been committed for a long time, they started out in one or the other. They started out really skinny or they started out really overweight. And what ended up happening was they got into the gym, they made results within the first 2 to 3 months, whether it was 20 pounds of weight lost or they gained a couple pounds of muscle and their bench went up or their squat, whatever. That was what got them hooked though, right? And so once you get hooked, that's how it becomes addictive and you like actually want to continue to progress because you realize like, wow, I'm capable of this stuff, right? And so that's what I mean whenever I say set realistic goals. Don't go into the gym and say, well, I need to buy every supplement under the sun because that's how I'm going to get I'm going to reach these goals. Supplements can help, but supplements are supplements, and just like steroids, they're not a magic pill. I suggest supplements and PEDs when you're on that advanced end of the spectrum of, okay, I'm applying every ounce of willpower, every ounce of effort to every single day. Now I would introduce these things because then you at least have a commitment that can justify the expenses of what you're doing. So yeah, that I'm gonna leave it at that because this goes into the next topic of step 2, determine where you need to start. And when I say that, I mean you need to have a realistic, honest look at yourself. A lot of people will over assume how high in body fat they are or how low, or that they're really low in body fat. So what I mean by that is I'll have a guy come to me that says, oh, I'm probably like 8% body fat. And I can take one look at him and say, no offense, you're not 8% body fat. Because even me at 8% body fat, I still feel like I'm fat at 8% body fat because, I'm comparing myself to the most conditioned people on stage. But your perception of your body fat percentage can be very skewed, especially being on the outskirts. You've never been in the gym. You've never seen truly conditioned lean competitors or athletes or fitness models or whatever it may be. So your perception of your body fat level can definitely be something that will skew this step 2, is determining whether you need to start a cut, maintain, or a bulk. And I throw those words around very loosely because I don't really like the term cut and bulk. For the average person at least, because they all of a sudden get it in their head that they either need to starve or they need to throw the whole kitchen at their body, right? Or at their stomach, right? It's not necessarily that. What you need to understand and maintain as well. Let's say you're a skinny individual. You don't have a lot of fat. You don't have a lot of muscle. It's very likely that you can get into a caloric surplus or a bulk, and you're going to put on a pretty substantial amount of muscle and probably limited amounts of fat, given your training is set up properly, you're hydrating and you're eating properly, and you're getting enough sleep and you're recovering properly, and your hormones are also in good ranges, because a lot of that stuff plays roles, and that's like getting off the tip of the iceberg of like dealing with a client. Whenever I meet a client for the first time, I can assess their body, but without blood work to also look at, I don't know if they are in the proper health to even start a cut or a bulk. If your thyroid's out of whack, you might not be ready for a cut. If your testosterone's low and estrogen's high and your body fat's high, or your insulin sensitivity is poor, you might not be ready to put on muscle. You might not be ready to bulk, if you will. So in some cases, whenever I start with a client, I'll just say, we're going to try to find your maintenance calories. And a lot of you who are new to this realm of fitness, you might be asking yourself, what do you mean maintenance, Daniel? I don't know what you're talking about. Maintenance is how many calories you burn per day. And in essence, how many calories you need in order to sustain your current body weight. So let's say you're a 200-pound male. The average 200-pound male, according to the FDA and according to the American Health Standards, whatever, your average, what you need to maintain your body weight is anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 calories. I will say that is largely variable, and I would not go by that. And that's going to get into a whole nother topic of talking about calories as well, because that goes hand in hand with what we're about to talk about here in a second. But what I will say is we need to have an understanding of where you're at maintenance calorie wise. Like what amount of calories on average per day do you need to consume in order to maintain, lose, or gain weight? So if you're maintaining your weight, it should be however, and remember, our activity level, our stressors in life, that all plays a role in this energy totem pole, if you will. This totem pole is your energy in essence. And so there are going to be days where you're going to have very high activity, so that number is going to creep up a little bit higher, maybe a couple hundred extra calories. And there are going to be some days where you're sitting in an office chair like this for 8 hours a day, if you're an office worker, and your calories are down here. But we're trying to find the average in between, because if you eat at that average, you're going to maintain your weight. So that gets into step number 3, determining your total daily energy expenditure, and that is essentially your maintenance calories. If you want to try to understand that better, I would definitely highly recommend researching it yourself. Google TDEE, or total daily energy expenditure. What you'll find out is it is comprised of a couple different factors. The first factor being your basal metabolic rate. So let's say my human body, I'm just sitting here and I'm just resting and I don't move a muscle at all. It is literally me not moving, just purely existing in this plane of existence. That is how many calories I require to exist, essentially. Like, for me to maintain my weight without any excess, like I'm not raising a finger, basal metabolic rate. So that could be roughly, for me, being a pretty muscular male, anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 calories just to maintain my weight. So, and I'll get into that subject here in a second. So that is your main calorie expenditure. It makes up about 70% of your total energy expenditure per day, is just maintaining your body weight. So a lot of people get it confused. They think that they can go eat a slice of cake or a whole box of pizza, and they can go run on the treadmill for an hour, and that's going to burn off all the calories, when in reality you probably burn off like maybe 10%, if that. It truly is that insignificant when you realize, that's why going off plan and eating an excess calories is so detrimental on your physique and the way your scale weight's going to trend, because you have one bad day of eating and that extra 500 to 1,000 calories could be stored as body fat. And we know at this point that a pound of fat is roughly 3,500 calories, which is why in order to lose weight, we typically would try to put you in a 3,500 calorie deficit per week. So that would be 500 calories cut off of your total daily energy expenditure per day in order to lose that pound of fat over the course of a week. And so, of course, energy expenditure can be manipulated, like increasing cardio every day, to try to create that 500 calorie deficit where we don't have to restrict literally 500 calories of food. Because if you look at 500 calories of food, even whenever it's clean quality food, it's a lot of density, and so you're going to definitely notice the hunger pains start to show up after you've been dieting for a while. So you've got your basal metabolic rate, your exercise activity thermogenesis, so the calories that you burn in an exercise state. You have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which could be walking up a flight of stairs, fidgeting. I'm sitting here and I'm tapping my feet and I'm shaking my hands around. I'm burning calories doing this, right? And then, of course, your final thing that can burn calories is the thermic effect of food. This is why you'll typically see a lot of individuals who have no clue, the bodybuilding scene, for example, but they just go on a weight loss plan. You always hear it recommended to eat a high protein diet. Protein has a high thermic effect. So even if it's just 10% extra calorie burn per day, the more protein you ingest, and I'm not over here saying you need to eat 2 to 3 grams of protein per pound of your body weight, because there is an excess amount and it puts a lot of strain on your gut. But higher protein diets typically create more calorie expenditure, because your body actually has to burn calories in order to digest the protein, as opposed to fats or carbs. So those are the 4 compiling factors that make up your total daily energy expenditure, which essentially puts you whether you're in a maintenance, surplus, or deficit. Okay, so once you've determined your total daily energy expenditure, and understand there are calculators out there, that's why I went ahead and suggested research this yourself. You can, and take it with a grain of salt, total daily energy expenditure calculators can be largely inaccurate if you don't be honest with yourself, because they ask you for basic information. They'll ask you for, and the best one is using the St. Mifflin, I think it is, Jor, I don't know, Gior, however you say that. That is like the most accurate version, and it's because it also takes into account your body fat, but you have to understand what your body fat percentage really is, if not a rough estimate, to even use that effectively. But it takes your age, because age is a factor too, your body weight, your height. So I'm a 5'9", 5'9.5" male, being 230 pounds. My total daily energy expenditure, especially being lean, is going to be a lot higher than, you know, a man that's 6'3", 230 pounds, and he's also higher in body fat than me. So I'm going to burn more calories literally just sitting here resting than that guy is because I have more muscle. And I'll make an analogy for that here in a minute too that really can help people kind of understand why bodybuilding can be such an interesting thing to pursue, and the cool but also at the same time detrimental effect that it can have. So first, like I said, all those metrics that are used to assess your total daily energy expenditure, that is your basic metrics. And then the final metric outside of using the St. Mifflin body fat percentage estimate is what's your activity level. Are you sedentary? You sit 8 hours a day every single day and you don't exercise at all? Do you exercise 1 to 3 times a week with moderate intensity? I'm talking like your heart rate doesn't really get that high. Are you training 4 to 5 days a week? Are you working like construction and working out 7 days a week? That is like the totem pole. And so a lot of people, they don't know where they land in that because it's hard to really, a lot of people aren't honest with themselves whenever they think about how many calories or rather how active they are. People that think they work hard aren't actually working hard. And I'll be honest, I work industrial maintenance, but not every day is hard. Some days I sit for most of the day because that's whenever the company's making money because machines aren't breaking. But there are also some days where I walk 20,000 steps and I'm moving around constantly. So my total daily energy expenditure probably fluctuates a lot, especially the higher in body mass that I am with muscularity, the more of that distribution of energy expenditure per day can change. It can be a very substantial difference. I could burn an extra 500 calories one day just from the extra steps. So that can play a role. So anyway, we've gotten that out of the way. So once you have like an understanding of what total daily energy expenditure is, and you've gotten a rough estimate, and I'll tell you, it's better to, I might be going out on a limb and saying this, it's better to go ahead and underestimate your activity level than to overestimate, because I'd rather an individual have a little bit of weight loss in the beginning, unless you're like, you look like you're anorexic and you're starving, then maybe overestimate. And if you gain a pound in the next week, we can readjust and say, okay, well, you gained a pound, so you were eating in a 3,500 calorie surplus per week, so 500 calories per day. Let's dial that back 500 calories and reassess next week. But if you're like an average person that's 15 to 30% body fat, it's not going to hurt you if you dial, because eventually you're going to be dieting anyway. So if we go ahead and put you in a 1 pound weight loss per week, we can adjust from there if need be to put you back at maintenance. If you're not intending on losing weight, right? Okay, so I got that out of the way. I think I cleared that concisely enough that people will understand how important that is when assessing your goals, right? You want to put on muscle, then you're going to have to eat in a surplus. But if you're too fat, it's probably not a good idea to try to start putting on muscle, because you're just going to have to cut more fat off later, diet more fat off later, and that sucks. And then you're more likely to lose that muscle that you just put on. So we have to be honest with ourselves, or where are we at on this totem pole of not only energy expenditure, but where are we at body fat percentage wise? If you're too high in body fat, insulin sensitivity is going to be blunted. You're not going to have a very good response to the extra food. And so if you're more into the bodybuilding scene, what you'll find out and why it's so ideal to compete once a year is that we get into our lowest body fat state possible. So yes, we're in a state where it's the hardest to hold on to tissue, but as soon as you're at the lowest body fat you can possibly be, as long as you're structured with how you gain that weight back, you're in a very insulin sensitive state, in an anabolic state, to put on a lot of muscle post show. So a lot of guys can, if they're productive enough with their post show rebound, you can put on 10 pounds per year. You could put on 5 to 10 pounds of muscle per year, even as an advanced bodybuilder. And you'll see that a lot with advanced Mr. Olympia caliber bodybuilders. Granted, genetics do play a role. Year after year, they're putting on 5 to 10 pounds of pure tissue. And if you actually think about that, because a lot of people get that confused, I'm not talking about water weight or body fat. I'm talking about pure muscle density. And it's very rare that you're actually putting on 5 to 10 pounds per year. And so that's why a lot of bodybuilders do compete, whether they actually need to be, or you might not even actually compete in a show. You might just do a mock competition prep. Just diet down to where you potentially would for a show, maybe a little bit less, and set yourself up for a really good growth phase. But if you're the average person, this is not of concern to you right now, but it will be later. Okay, so there was one other thing I want to mention on total daily energy expenditure. Okay, the analogy. So I like to use the analogy like a vehicle. You've got a truck over here that's got a V8 engine in it, and then you've got a car over here that's got a 4-cylinder. We both know that the V8 is going to suck up more gas, per mile. The miles per gallon is not going to be as high and fuel efficient as the 4-cylinder. It's the same thing with muscle. Fat is a storage of energy. So no excess fat on your body doesn't really provide you more energy expenditure, if you will, but the more muscle you put on your body, essentially the bigger the engine. So I can walk 2 miles per hour for 30 minutes with all this muscle I have and burn more calories than the fat person who, I say fat, sorry. I mean, I'm throwing that word around loosely because in the sport of bodybuilding, we don't get offended by fat, skinny, muscular, whatever. The person who's not very muscular, because I'm trying to like compare 230 pounds, 5'9", 10%, 12% body fat versus the 230, 5'9", 20 to 25% body fat. My engine's going to be bigger. So I'm going to require more fuel to walk that 2 miles per hour for 30 minutes. So I'm going to burn more calories doing the exact same thing that this guy's doing. That weighs the exact same as me, but he has less muscle mass. That is the detriment, if you will, with the sport of bodybuilding. Because when I'm at work and people see how much I eat whenever I'm in prep and I'm starving, literally, like I feel like I'm starving, they're like, God, but you eat so much food. But I tell them, I'm like, you don't realize though, like I eat a lot of food, but I also require more food just to feel, to sustain the engine, to sustain the fuel. And so my deficit to diet is higher than some people's surplus because I have that much muscle to sustain where they are coming from 140 pounds, no muscle. So it can kind of be a detriment at times because then you realize like, wow, I'm like my full-time job outside of my full-time job is eating because I have to constantly eat in order to sustain myself. So I can only imagine being a 300-pound Mr. Olympia caliber bodybuilder trying to maintain that much muscle. That is a lot of eating. I'm not there yet. So I wanted to use that analogy though. Vehicle to human body, we're just like vehicles. The more muscle you have, the bigger your engine's going to be and the more fuel that you're going to require in order to sustain your engine versus the 4-cylinder who's not going to take that much fuel. So step 4, and I've got 8 steps here, so I'm trying to like pedal on here, is determine your macros. So now that we've assessed and we've kind of figured out this is what your average total daily energy expenditure is going to be, we want to try to leverage the most macro friendly profile. There are 2 ways to go about this. If I'm working with a prep client, I'm gonna write you a meal plan because I want you to buy the book, follow the program, follow the meals, because it's easier to make assessments on your physique week by week if I know that you're eating the exact same things at meals 1 through 5 every single week, every single day. And of course, and I will mention this later, there is some flexibility, especially if you're a lifestyle client. I personally don't really try to prescribe a meal plan to lifestyle clients because I know that their ambition is not as serious as the person who might be trying to get a pro card, right? And so for my lifestyle clients, it's more macros versus here's a meal plan, which it's going to have the macros assessed, of course, but the lifestyle clients have more flexibility with they get to choose what's in each meal as long as it's pretty close to the macros that I prescribe to them. For some people that might not be what they want, and if they want more strict dieting, then by all means I'm all for that. And I'm also I can write out a template of a good meal plan you could follow where maybe on certain days where you're not able to follow all those meals, then you can plug in your own meals. But typically I always tell people just single ingredient options is your best choice. Chicken, rice, meat and carbs, right? Steak, chicken, fish, whatever, eggs, and then rice, potatoes, starches, whatever. So determining your macros, I kind of branched on this earlier. I would not I would not advocate for eating 2+ grams of protein per pound of body weight. While there was this bro science myth, and there are still a couple old school bodybuilders and maybe even newer philosophy that still endorse the 2 gram per pound of body weight. But the problem I see with that is it doesn't fit everybody. If you can get away with it, like my stomach's hard as nails, I could probably eat 2 grams per pound of body weight protein source, and I'd be fine. But how long could I sustain that? How long can I sustain my gut health doing that? Because that's a lot of freaking protein. I mean, if you break that down, for me, 230-pound bodybuilder, that's 460 grams of protein. And if I were to add up the amount of chicken or steak or whatever per day I'd have to eat to meet that protein requirement, I'd be eating 6+ pounds of fucking meat a day. Like, that's just a lot. So a gram to maybe 1.25 grams per pound of body weight. Now I could convert that to kilograms, but here in America we use the standard system, so that's what I'm going by. Gram of protein per pound of body weight. So you can kind of steer a little bit lower if you want, like 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, but I suggest 1 to 1.25, 1.3 grams per pound of body weight. 1.3 being the high end. Maybe in a prep, we would consider bumping that to 1.5 on your lower carb days, because for a lot of people, the protein sources are the things that are very satiating. So for me personally, I do like the higher protein whenever I'm in a cut, because food's already low as it is. So I'm going to be digesting that food very quickly. And so I can get away with higher protein because my overall intake of food is a lot lower. So determining macros, we're gonna have your protein in around 1 gram per pound of body weight, somewhere in that range, as I mentioned. And then from there, understand this with macronutrients. Proteins and fats are essential nutrient sources, but carbs are technically not. You can go on a 0-carb keto. You can go on 0-carb and survive. It is ideal to have carbs in your diet, and I'll kind of branch into that here in a minute. But they're not necessary for survival. Protein is good for, of course, musculoskeletal, recovery and trying to build muscle, of course. But there's more involved with protein. I can be the dumb meathead and say, oh, protein's for building muscle, but there are a lot more metabolic processes that go on that are important when it comes to taking in protein. But on the other hand, fats are essential for a lot of things as well. Cholesterol, they're going to be essential for hormone production. So your testosterone levels, your estrogen levels, that is all dependent on a certain essential fatty acids that you're consuming. Now, I'm not saying you should go full carnivore type diet, because that's ridiculous. I'm sure it can be applicable for some people, and I'm not gonna shit on somebody for something that's working for them and it's not having negative impact on their blood tests. But what I will tell you is most individuals who are going to straight carnivore, whether it be all red meat with maybe some chicken and fish added in and a shitload of butter, they end up going and getting blood work, and their triglycerides and their cholesterol goes through the roof. But on the other hand, there are some individuals who don't abuse it and overdo it, and their blood work actually comes back fine. So if you want to do that for the sake of dieting, wouldn't suggest it for bodybuilders. Of course not. That's really high protein in your diet, lots of fats, not really good for bodybuilding purposes. Carbs are not an essential nutrient source, but they are the most official energy source when it comes to muscle. So to get into like the basics, we store carbs are broken down into glucose. Glucose is essentially what you refer to your blood sugar as. It's the sugar in the blood. And your body stores that in 2 separate mechanisms of action, whether it be storing it in the liver, called glucagon, and that is essentially like a backup reserve of energy storage in case your blood sugar starts to dip low because you go hours and hours and hours without eating. So your body will release blood sugar that's stored in the liver into your bloodstream to keep your blood sugar levels in a healthy range. That's how the pancreas and the liver, they have messengers that go back and forth with each other, telling your body to do that, right? Because your pancreas ends up having to produce insulin to keep the blood sugar down, right? But you don't want it to get too low. You don't want it to get too high. On the other hand, the way it works for us bodybuilders is it's stored as muscle glycogen. And there's a process with that too. It's not just carbs. There's water, sodium, and potassium as well that you have to consider. And whenever I have a prep client, I can get more in depth on that, but it's not relevant to this video. Just understand that your body prefers carbs as energy for musculoskeletal contraction, like contractile muscles or contracting muscles your body prefers carbs as an energy source. So you'll see a lot of guys sipping on Gatorade, sipping on some kind of carb drink while they're training, because that keeps their blood sugar levels slightly elevated so that they can continue to fuel the training, especially when training gets really intense. And then, of course, just leveraging carbs around training. And then, you know, a couple meals throughout the day, you might throw in some carbs, especially if you're an active worker like me. Man, as soon as I pull carbs down, that's when I start to really feel like shit, because that's like the preferred fuel source for energy when it comes to, like, you know, moving around and using your muscles. And because I'm walking around 12 hours a day in industrial maintenance, that can be really exhausting. It gets to the point where the boots start to feel heavy. It feels like I'm pulling concrete on my feet. But yes, they are the preferred fuel source. So you probably are going to be leveraging carbs. So to not get onto a huge tangent outside of that, I think I've kind of clarified on that. We would be predominantly 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. We would want just enough fat in your diet in order to aid with metabolism and hormone production. So general rule of thumb here, it's usually around 40 to 60 grams of fat. That might be a little low or a little high. It's generally a very broad range. It depends on the person, whether you're female or male, your body weight. There's a lot of factors that are involved there. But it's typically in that 40 to 60 gram mark. It sometimes creeps up a little bit higher, especially in an off season when you're trying to throw in extra calories and you can no longer keep throwing carbs at your body unless you have some kind of exogenous insulin that you're able to use to keep insulin sensitivity high. We've got to have some way to keep throwing calories at the body to keep growing, in a sense, to create the caloric surplus in order to potentially put on more muscle. So there is that caveat. And then the rest of the calories are put into carbs. You know, so let's say I set up a base plan. My maintenance is 3,500 calories. I eat 250 grams to 300 grams of protein, probably around 35 to 60 grams of fat, and roughly 300 to 500 grams of carbs. Whatever I'm doing, I'm spitballing that out of my head. So if the math is a little bit off there, apologize. But you get what I'm saying. So you have two main macronutrient, you know, profiles that you want to have set up in regards, or rather to leverage for the sake of your health, and also for, you know, muscularity, trying to put on muscle, recovering, and also satiety if you're dieting. And then the rest of it gets thrown into carbs. So whatever your maintenance is, you would take those first two numbers. You know, there's 4 calories in a gram of protein, 9 calories in a gram of fat. You would multiply X amount of protein, you know, that you need. So 200 grams times 4, that's 800 calories. Then you'd take the 9 calories per gram of fat and whatever fat you end up taking. So 9 times 50 grams of fat. So what? That's my brain, 450 calories. You add those two together and then you subtract it from your maintenance, and that would tell you how many calories you need from carbs. Well, there's 4 calories in carbs. So you divide that number by 4, and that gives you how many carbs that you would need in order to fill in the rest of your total daily energy expenditure needs, whether it be maintenance, cut, or bulk. Now, understand that too, is that maintenance is total daily energy expenditure. If we're trying to increase weight, so say you want to put on a pound of weight per week, then you would increase that by 500 calories per day, or 3,500 calories over the entire week. And then the opposite for losing weight too, for a gram or a pound of body weight. So there's that. And there's some caveats there, but I'm trying to like put out the basic information because I feel like a lot of people could benefit from this. So the next step that I have in this is figure out what kind of training split is best suited for your goals. And so it is person dependent what your goals are. If you're a lifestyle client and the sole purpose is I don't want to be in the gym 7 days a week, 7 days a week, 5-6 days a week, you know, then let's say you want to train 3 days a week, then we might do like an upper lower, or like if that's 4 days a week, but upper lower rest, upper lower, something like that. It could be a push pull leg split. It could be a specific split to leverage if you have certain body parts that are really strong and we need to bring up other body parts. That really is going to be person dependent. So I'm not going to really go into that too much. I'm not going to argue about what training program is the best. I think there are training programs that are more applicable at certain times than others, but I don't think there's a all-time best training program for any person, right? I think it all comes down to your wants and needs. Are you trying to be an Olympic lifter? Are you trying to maintain flexibility? Are you a bikini competitor, or are you a male bodybuilder? There's a lot to consider there. So that's something that you have to figure out for yourself. Or if you're working with me, we can discuss that together. Number 6 And this one is a big one. And this comes down to the lifestyle clients typically to sorry, stuttering, to develop better habits with tracking metrics. And what I mean by that, tracking metrics being there are certain markers that we need to track daily, weekly, monthly in order to develop better prediction, if you will, of the direction you're moving. If you take your weight once a week, I have no idea what you're actually, if you're gaining or losing weight. Because I'll tell you this, and this is why weight is not the most optimal way of predicting results, or rather assessing results, because weight fluctuates a lot. If I have 2 gallons of water versus 1.5 gallons of water throughout the day, I might wake up a pound lighter. I might wake up a pound heavier. 2-3 pounds lighter, 2-3 pounds heavier. If I plug in an alternate meal instead of the one that's prescribed to me in the meal plan, and it's got a different profile of food, my body might digest that differently, and I might have a pound of food sitting in my stomach the next day. I might be constipated all day one day, and then the next day, it all blows out of me. So I'm telling you, like, you take your weight once a week, and that weight from one week to the other could be a 5-pound jump. It's, if not more. So that's why the first thing I tell people is if you're not tracking your weight every day, you're already failing, because it is a great metric to have, but you need to take your average throughout the entire week. So if you take your weight 7 days a week, and I know a lot of people have an emotional attachment or detachment to tracking their weight because they don't like to see the number on the scale. And I used to have that for gaining weight, actually, because when I would go into an off season, I wanted to put on muscle. I was hell bent. I had to put on a pound per week. Sometimes weight stalls, and sometimes you just have to be patient. And sometimes there's more to assess than just if you're increasing on the scale. And that's where we'll get in check-ins as well here in a minute. And that's more for client coaching relationships. But weight is like the easiest thing that you can track every day. And all you got to do is write it down in a notes app and just track it every single day. Take a 7-day average. We all went to school. We all learned how to take an average. If you don't know how to take an average, it's okay. Go and Google it. It's very simple. Add up the 7 days of the week and divide it by 7. That's literally how you take your average. Very simple stuff, but it will give you an idea of where your weight's trending, because then you take all those numbers and you plug them all in. And I forgot to preface, you have to track your weight at the same time every day. So if you take and really, you should always take it first thing in the morning. You should have been fasted for 6 to 8 hours, depending on how much you're able to sleep every night. Because sometimes I have to sacrifice and I only get 6 hours of sleep, and I've got to get going on the next day. So I have to take my weight a little bit more prematurely than I would on a normal day where I can get full sleep and I don't have work, back to back. But 6 to 8 hours fasted, you go pee if you can, go number 2 if you can, because you want to clear all that out too if you can, and then go take your weight and track that every single day. And that's a great metric to see where you're trending. If you're gaining weight, you're losing weight, you're maintaining weight, this will give you a better indication if you're actually at your total daily energy expenditure, whether it be maintenance or if you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. That is the best metric. The second best metric in terms of like weight gain and weight loss, aside from the scale, is actually pictures. And that's why we do check-in photos with clients, because we get to look at essentially an image of your body, the same exact lighting, the same exact angle, the same setup, same day of the week. And it gives us an idea, well, maybe his weight didn't change, but he looks leaner. He looks a lot lighter or tighter this week. His waist doesn't look blown out. Or on the opposite, this week he's looking a lot softer and I can see he's gained a lot of weight. So we might need to dial things back so he doesn't just accrue excess body fat when we're trying to push him in the direction of putting on muscle. So that's why pictures can be a very helpful metric in regards to assessing if the calorie expenditure or the calorie intake is efficient at the goal that we're trying to pursue. Other metrics, there's a couple others for health metrics, blood pressure being one. Blood pressure is considered the silent killer. It kills a lot of bodybuilders. That's what I mentioned in the last video, is how a lot of bodybuilders end up dying. And that's why there's so much shock value behind the word steroids. I was trying to say it yesterday and my brain couldn't think of it, but there's a large stigmatism around steroids. It's very taboo to talk about. Well, I shouldn't say that, because it seems like it's the opposite nowadays. It's not really taboo to talk about. It's almost like the opposite. It's hyper glorified, and people almost Oh, thank you so much for your transparency. You're a 19-year-old kid who's blasting 500 milligrams of tren. It's just thank you so much for your transparency, though. That's just so awesome, dude. I get it. I like that we're in a time where we can be more transparent. Everybody's not bastardized for their decisions, but there are individuals who are they're not only being transparent, they're glorifying it, and they're completely misguided and have the wrong intentions behind why they're doing these things. And they're very uneducated when it comes to how to actually do these things safely. Which is why I don't advocate, but I understand. I'd be a hypocrite to say don't take steroids. I'm just saying there's a safe way and a stupid way to do them, and a lot of people nowadays, a lot, especially young guys my age, are doing them in a stupid way, and they're glorifying it on social media. So that I have a gear to grind, or it grinds my gears. It grinds my gears a lot to see that shit. So blood pressure, that can be one. You want to take your blood pressure at the same time, preferably fasted, preferably after you've drank 32 to 64 ounces of water. 32 being like a minimum. And the reason I say that is blood is made up of water. And when you wake up 8 hours fasted, your blood is very dehydrated. And that can play a huge role in skewing results. So, and not only taking one blood pressure test, I'd probably take it 2 or 3 times to get an average of what your average blood pressure is trending. Um, you have to understand, not only do we have to know how to track, or not only do we have to develop the habits of tracking, but we have to learn how to track properly. That's why I set I clarify on these things like tracking body weight. You don't just track your body weight any time of the day. Your final meal of the day, I'm gonna weigh myself. Well, that doesn't really do you any good because you got 6 pounds of food in your stomach and you probably have a turd waiting tomorrow. Like, you see what I'm saying? Same with blood pressure. You want to have like a specific way you're doing it and do that every time. And then blood glucose probably being I put blood pressure above blood glucose in terms of priority because I think it's very important that we are managing our heart health and how hard our hearts happen to pump blood to our extremities. But blood glucose is honestly right in line with blood pressure. And the reason why I say that is because you can be developing diabetes without even realizing it. When people tell me about how they're type 2 diabetic, granted, there is a type of diabetes that you're born with genetically, and I feel so sorry for those individuals. And it actually honestly upsets me to no end whenever you have individuals who are just eating their way into diabetes knowingly almost, and they just remain blissfully ignorant whenever we have a lot of information available to us to try to avoid it. And so those people act like they catch some kind of cold essentially when they're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Dude, it's no surprise. You're drinking sugary beverages all day, you're eating whatever you want, and you're not doing anything to burn calories. So you're going to become diabetic. It just happens. And it sucks because I only feel horrible for the type 1 diabetics who are born that way because they literally have to wear an insulin. They have to wear an electric robotic insulin pump, a artificial pancreas, if you will, to keep their blood sugar in optimal ranges. And even that is not as perfect as our body is created. Whatever your belief is on the way that the human body or the humans came to exist, it is truly incredible how just overwhelmingly autonomous our bodies are in the way that they function. And it's so unfortunate that we poison ourselves with these modern American diets and put ourselves in positions where our bodies can't do what they're supposed to be doing. And I would caveat off that and say that in the sport of bodybuilding, we're quite honestly, we are staring death in the, I say staring death in the face. We are literally toying with with the bomb because we're constantly pushing our bodies to go beyond limits of what's normal. So while I'm not going to sit here and bastardize the people who are blissfully ignorant to becoming diabetic, what I'm trying to say is it's very important that we track our blood glucose, so we try to avoid that. And same for us bodybuilders. We're eating very high carb diets, and a lot of people get that confused too, that carbs make you fat. It's a combination of things. It's the excess carbs. It's probably the excess carbs with a combination of excess fat. And it's insulin resistance, because all three of those things go hand in hand with each other on how you end up becoming fat from eating excess carbs. And so as a bodybuilder where I'm eating 600 to 800 grams of carbs per day in the off season, people hear that number, and if you actually did the math on the average American who's developing diabetes, they're probably eating half of that and becoming diabetic. But it's because they're not doing anything activity wise to burn off that excess glucose that's in your body, because exercise is going to help a lot with maintaining insulin sensitivity and also staying relatively low in body fat. So those are important things. Weight, blood pressure, and blood glucose. If you need to go into more depth on that, I promise it's a quick Google search and you can figure out this information for yourself. I'm just trying to point people in the right direction, things that are important to be tracking. And these three metrics help a lot when it comes to your overall goal, whether it be losing weight or gaining muscle. When you start to notice blood glucose trending high, fasted, and between meals, 2 hours after a meal, it's probably a good sign that whether you're an advanced bodybuilder and there are other things like growth hormone that are causing insulin resistance, and you possibly need to leverage insulin in the off season, not that everybody has access to exogenous insulin, but for the people that do, it helps us predict these things and proactively go against allowing the body, the pancreas, to start, going into overdrive, trying to make up for what you're not using exogenously. But on the other hand, if you don't have access to insulin and you notice you're becoming insulin resistant, then it's very likely at this point, this is a key indication that we need to let off the gas pedal and we need to resensitize. And how do you resensitize? You lose some of the excess body fat and you lower your carb intake for a little while. It gives your pancreas a break. It's the same thing with the PEDs. When you bring PEDs in, you can only run them for so long before eventually you have to dial them back because your body just can't handle the stress any longer. It's the same thing with food. It's the same thing with these metrics that I'm trying to, show you guys. Same with blood pressure. If blood pressure is trending high, it's probably because you're getting too heavy or you have way too much salt and too little of water in your diet. There's a lot of things to consider here. But these are metrics that are very important for anybody that's trying to do this on their own or if you have a coach with you. So we're almost done here. Number 7 is learn how to become flexible and autonomous. And this kind of branches off of what I was talking about earlier, whether you're a lifestyle or prep client. I, as a coach, do not expect a client that's, whether they're in prep or lifestyle, to be robotic 24/7, 365 days out of the year. There are individuals that can do it, and I could name some, but I will just go ahead and say I know some individuals who they do not skip a beat. They are true to their craft and they accept being robotic, not doing anything off plan. They do everything by the book. Not everybody's like that. And I can actually say myself, and my girlfriend will give me a lot of credit. Granted, I had a little bit of flexibility here within the last few weeks as I got out of this last contest prep, but 26 weeks of dieting for the show, I dropped from 254 down to 210, and I didn't have one cheat meal. I didn't have one off-plan meal. Everything was to the book, and I prepped myself. I coached myself for all of it, and I lost, that's 44 pounds in a matter of 20-ish weeks. And I held on to a lot of tissue too while I did so. I got a little fluffy in the off season, and believe it or not, I got fluffy in the off season. I didn't even eat off plan. I was just eating so much damn food, and I actually didn't know when to, personally myself, I didn't know when to stop. Although my metrics were reading pretty good, my blood pressure and my blood glucose were still within range, even at the top end of the off season. I just got really heavy. But I also am very active, so of course a lot of those things stayed healthy. And I like I said, I do everything by the book. You can ask my girlfriend. Obviously, she's not on camera with me, but she would tell you this man, like he doesn't even want to have an off-plan meal because he wants so badly to do it the robotic way. I want to stick to the plan. I want to never, eat off of the diet. But it's important that we develop flexibility and being autonomous. And those sound very contradictory to one another. Flexibility is quite the opposite in the sense of autonomy, because autonomy tells us that you should be able to just do what's expected of you, where flexibility might be do what's expected of you, but this meal, I'm really not feeling this, or I want to plug in something else. Those kind of go hand in hand though. And what I'm trying to say by that is, if my coach prescribes me 5 meals a day, I say prescribe like it's a prescription, but he gives me a plan of 5 meals per day. And he says, hey, you can have a free meal once a week, twice a week. And that free meal is just for one meal. That flexibility, but being autonomous, is saying, I don't have to go to my coach and say, Coach, what am I allowed to eat for my free meal? It's, okay, well, I understand that this meal says I need to have around this amount of protein, around this amount of carbs, and this amount of fat. Let me think of some options, ingredient-wise, whether it's going out to eat or making something at home, that can fit into those macros. So essentially the macro plan that I'm assigning flexibility for lifestyle clients. Hey, you don't have to follow these 5 meals, but you need to try to follow these macros. That is flexibility. That's being autonomous with your coach. It's not relying on your coach to say, this is what you're allowed to eat. You should have a better understanding to this point of what, you need to do to try to leverage, the proper macros. And so that's what I mean by that. And it takes a lot of maturing in realizing that it's okay to have those off-plan meals. It's not unhealthy. You don't have to be robotic. There's some people that just like it. And I like being robotic. But if you don't, and there are times where you're just like, I just really want to go out to eat with my girlfriend. I want to go out to eat with my partner, my wife, my husband, whatever. Then you need to have that flexibility. You need to understand how to have that mature flexibility with, well, just because he said I can have a free meal or she said I can have a free meal doesn't mean I can just go eat pizza and ice cream. I'm still going to try to make this a productive free meal. And that is flexibility and autonomy. It's not, I need to go to my coach and have him tell me what I'm allowed to eat. No, you can figure this stuff out on your own. You just need to have enough sense to say, okay, well, this meal says I need these things. So let me try to figure out what I can plug in. And it doesn't have to be right on 50 grams of protein. If you get 40, so be it. Put a little bit more into carbs. It's not a big deal, right? You're going to miss out on 10 grams of protein. So what? There's a little bit of flexibility there, but just understand that takes a lot of the stress out of being a client, because you no longer have to sit there and stress about your every move, and you don't want to disappoint your coach, right? And I think what's more disappointing for a coach is finding out that your client didn't have enough comfort with themselves, whether it be to contact their coach and say, hey, I need your help coming up with some meal ideas that I can use to plug in for this free meal, or being autonomous enough to say, okay, well, coach said I can have a free meal, but here, I'm going to still try to leverage the proper macros. I'm not just going to go and shit the bed for one meal and just eat everything in the kitchen, right? So that is learning how to become flexible and autonomous. And number 8, and this is like a trademark. I don't know if Austin takes this trademark, but my coach who I'm working with, Austin Brown, he says bodybuild all the time. And I actually like it because it's as simple as it sounds. It's like, at the end of the day, what are bodybuilders? We are people who do the exact same thing every day, 365 days out of the year, because we have ambition to go far in the sport. And we love it. We just love going into the gym and training. We love sticking to the meal plan. We love everything about what we're doing. And that is why I have so much passion and love for the sport. And that's why I want to make videos like this now, so I can start putting out the free information that a lot of people gatekeep, or quite frankly, people just don't know where to look. So number 8 is just bodybuild. Just do the things that the bodybuilder is supposed to do. Look at a Mr. Olympia caliber competitor, look at an IFBB pro level competitor, and look at what they do every day. It's the same thing. They eat their 5 meals, they drink their water, they do their cardio, and they train their ass off. That is bodybuilding in essence. And people like me love it. I eat that shit up. I could do the same thing every single day, and I feel so fulfilled. That is bodybuilding. It's doing the exact same thing every day. And to some people, that's just not their thing, and that's okay. But I think it is important to develop some kind of mindset like that, because that instills discipline. And not only does it instill discipline, but once you develop that discipline, it instills confidence. And when you start to feel confident, it starts to become easier to stick to these things, and that reinforces your discipline, because the more confident you are and the better you feel about the results that you're making, the more you're like, I don't want to stray away. I want to keep doing this. And a lot of people on the outside will isolate you and call that unhealthy or addictive, or you have an eating disorder because you can't go off. No, I'm sorry, but you want to call me unhealthy. Once again, like I mentioned in the last episode, there are 2 ways to look at that. And usually the individuals who are lecturing you about your steroids or your bodybuilding lifestyle are the same ones that are getting plastered on the weekends drinking, or they smoke cigarettes, X, Y, and Z. I can list off a bunch of examples, but I'm not like out here to flame people. I have no problem with anybody living their life the way that they live it. Just as judgmental we are of ourselves as bodybuilders, as athletes, as human beings, I don't want to place judgment on anybody else for how they live their lives. You want to live your life that way, by all means. But if you're going to come here and complain to me about your problems, and I see where your problems are stemming from, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, well, I don't know, maybe it's the water. Maybe it's what they're putting in the water. That's why you have type 2 diabetes. No. It's staring you right in the face. It's just a lot of people, whether they want to be oblivious to it or not, they just are. And so unfortunately a lot of them, they end up in just this spiraling, a spiraling effect of constantly going through the cycle of, I'm going to get into the gym and I'm going to try to lose weight. They try for a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, and then they fall off. And then they have reasons to blame the gym or whatever else in their life, rather than sucking up and taking up responsibility for the fact that you're just being lazy, or you're making excuses that might sound valid, because believe me, I've been there. When you're stuck in misery, when you're stuck in this situation that you feel like is impossible to get out of, it's very easy to validate your excuses. And so you get stuck in this spiral of constantly, and man, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional about it. I just meet a lot of people like this. And so that's why I get so strongly emotional about it, because you wish that you could take the inner confidence and the discipline that you have and instill it in other people. But unfortunately, just like I myself, I had to instill it myself. I had to go through it myself. When I'm in the gym, I don't have somebody on my shoulder telling me to do my next set. I'm in there in my own head saying, I've got to do this. I've got to become better. I've got to keep pushing myself so I can become better. Nobody's in my corner telling me to do that next set. Nobody's in my corner telling me to do that extra rep. I'm my own coach, and that confidence I have within me is the only thing that keeps me disciplined and willing to go through those efforts. And so when you see people who have no foundation, they have no confidence in themselves, they have no discipline, you try to figure out, what can I get this individual to latch on to say, I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm not just going to give it a shot. I'm going to give it a shot for 3 months, and I'm going to see if I can change my life. And like I said before, it's usually the individuals that have hit rock bottom, whether it's alcoholism or being addicted to cigarettes or having a literal food eating disorder, whether you're eating for emotional problems, because a lot of people, they cope with their anxiety and their depression with food. And that is the worst way to cope with those things, because it's self-destruction. You're putting yourself in a worse position by doing these things. Where with the gym, that's the great thing about the gym for me, is it's like my therapy session. So every time I'm having a hard day, the gym is my place that I go to alleviate that stress. And man, what a win that is, because not only am I able to deal with the hardness in my life, the stress, with something that's positive and something that reinforces my discipline. And some people don't have that. Some people, they turn to their negative vices for those things. And I can't do anything but feel sorry for them, because I wish that I could apply my passion and my level of intensity in the gym to them. So you have to find something to latch on to. And this, I guess this is branching off of number 8, bodybuild. You have to develop that passion, that desire for something. And it doesn't even have to be because I want to be muscular. It can be, I want to start going to the gym to get healthy because I have kids that I have to be around here for. And God, does that get me emotional too? Because how many people are slowly killing themselves and aren't going to be around a long time for their kids? And not only that, but they're probably instilling poor eating behavior in their kids too. And then their kids are ending up with obesity and all these health problems before they're even grown enough to make decisions for themselves. And so that's another problem that we have in America, is gluttony. It's the convenience factor of, well, my kid won't shut up, so I'm going to take them to McDonald's to give them the food that's going to make them shut up, and it's going to satisfy their needs. And that's a lot of life now. It's instant gratification, it's convenience, and it's laziness, and it's not managing things the way that they used to be managed as parents. And I for one can't judge parents, especially because I'm not a parent. And I know that's a hard ass job, and especially nowadays where most families, the husband and wife are both having to work, and there's not much time for the kids. And really, there should be a key role. Somebody needs to be home to try to instill these things into kids. And so a lot of the times, I'm sure parents take the easier route because it's difficult. But life is fucking hard. No matter what deck of cards you're handed, whether you're a parent or you're single or you're married or whatever, your family member's dying of cancer. You have cancer. We're all thrown into this damn spiral of existence, and we have to figure out how to make the best of it. And so with all that being said, it's like, the reason I love bodybuilding so much is it at least instills some kind of normalcy in our day-to-day life. You know, it gives me a purpose and it gives me something to pursue every single day, where a lot of people don't have that. They don't have anything to wake up for besides their job and the stress that they have in their life. And that is why it sucks, and that's why I advocate specifically for exercise, because the individuals who think it sucks haven't done it long enough to say, wow, this is really empowering, this really feels good, because you haven't gotten there yet. And I was only fortunate because I started when I was a kid and I had nothing to do. I just sat at home and lifted weights. But when you're an adult and you're trying to jump into the realm of exercise, and you see kids like me, and I'm going to call myself a kid here because a lot of adults are in their 30s and 40s just now getting into the gym, or maybe they haven't been in shape since high school because they had life happen to them. They're seeing kids like me and thinking, what good am I doing here at 35 years old? And you've got this kid over here who's in the best shape of his life. I am fortunate and I am grateful, and I try to practice gratitude all the time that I'm in the situation that I'm in. But at the same time, there have been a lot of struggles in my own personal life that have challenged me and have reinstilled that foundation of discipline of, I can't let this go. And this is why I have to continue. All right, I've hit an hour now. I realize I just went on a long emotional tangent there, but it was just really important to me. That last one is very important, and it speaks volumes to me, that term, and I like it. Bodybuild is because that's all I've done for the last 10 years is bodybuild. I've eat, slept, and trained every day, dreaming to have this position in my life, and I have to remind myself to be grateful of where I'm at, because I might be looking at the peak of the mountain where I want to be, but there was one point where I just wanted to be here. And that's something that's important too, is just practice, gratitude with the fact that you might not have six-pack abs, you might not have the biggest arms, you might not have a big butt, as a girl, but you have legs, you've got arms, you've got a working pancreas. You don't have to stick yourself with this insulin pump every 3 days or every week or whatever to keep your pancreas, or sorry, to make up for your dead pancreas that has to keep you alive. There's so many things that we have to be appreciative of, and I think that we just take those things for granted. The human body, this vehicle, this body of ours is so important, and that's why it's so important that we keep it healthy. Because I don't want to be 70 years old and struggling to walk. I don't want to be 70 years old and people having to cater to my every need because I didn't take care of myself early on in life. I meet a lot of people that are already older and their muscles have already degenerated so much, they've already atrophied so much that they have nothing left. And so then they're having to get hip surgeries and knee surgeries and back surgeries because they didn't maintain the foundation when it was most important. And so to rebuild muscle at a much older age is much more difficult than if you just had muscle to begin with and maintained it all the way until you were older. And I think that's where I want to leave this. It's very important. The gym is not just about vanity. The gym is not about being just a bodybuilder. It is the way of life. It is the way of maintaining our physical health. Maybe not if you want to go back in time to when gyms weren't a thing, but physical activity, straining, contracting muscle. There was a time before gyms, there was a time before weightlifting, but even still, human beings had physical tasks that they had to do in order to maintain their ability to stand up from a chair, to walk up a flight of stairs. Like those basic things, you have to understand there's a lot of people that wish they had those things, but they can't even do those. That's why it's important that we go to the gym. That's why it's important that we maintain our health. That's why it's important that we start to question the things that we put in our bodies. So that's all that's where I want to leave it. So I hope this video helps. I hope it wasn't too drawn out. For any individuals who got a lot of information out of this, please leave comments down below. It lets me know that the information I'm putting out is helpful, and it provides y'all some insight, and I hope it wasn't overloaded with information, because that's another thing too. I'm very loaded with all this information, and I actually had to make this note list because I realized I was like, if I don't make a list of these steps, I'm just going to spitball and I'm not going to have any direction with where I'm trying to go with this video. So that's why I made this. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll try to keep the series going.